Hi, it's Colin Cowherd. I started The Volume to bring you some of the most authentic voices in sports. While you're here, make sure you hit subscribe. Thanks. All right, Daryl Morey, Sixers GM, former Rocket GM, a bon vivant, a world traveler, a global thinker.
Bon vivant, you'll have to explain that one.
Fancy guy. So you're in Philadelphia. Let's start with this. Like, Houston's a nice sports town, but there's something about the cold winters, the intensity, Northeast America, and I think this is a great quality. Philadelphia, they're hard on their GMs. They're hard on their players. They demand excellence. When you're driving to work and the Sixers are a topic on WIP radio, do you find it aggravating or wildly entertaining?
I love it. I think my last places I've worked, you could only hear football talk. So I'm like we actually in Houston one year, we were, I think, in the Western Conference Finals, and the only talk was the NFL draft. So it gives you a sense of how exciting it is here. The city's a buzz. You know, Joel Embiid's the favorite for MVP. We got a past MVP. We got a stacked team. We got a championship coach. Let's go.
Yeah, I said when the trade came down, I said it because it broke during my show. And I said, I think Philadelphia won the trade. Two reasons. One, and I don't think winning the trade, that's a media term. But I said, generally in my life, get the best player. I thought you did. And I said, secondly, this is a really joyful team. The chemistry's good. I'm just adding a really great piece. I said, listen, they gave up a lot, but that's a lot of moving parts. And this is the middle of a season. So, Daryl, my takeaway was, I do think it's easier to ask one great player to fit into a great locker room than a bunch of parts. Is that how you saw it?
Yeah, I obviously have a real good sense of how good James Harden is. And look, we have Joel Embiid. I think he's going to finish his career being talked of as one of the all-time great big men. I think James Harden's already being talked about as one of the all-time great perimeter players. Put them together. In terms of what you give up, I don't think you need to focus on that as much when you have an MVP level player. I have a short trade deadline story about what we gave up. So
I'd like to hear it.
Yeah. So it was the line of our trade deadline. So obviously we were trying to keep Tyrese Maxey and Thibault out of the deal. And obviously my job is to keep track of the future. And we ended up, they ended up insisting on 2 first-round picks if we didn't include them. And they were pretty steadfast. And at the end of the day, you have to either decide to make a deal or pass. And, we've passed many times. So anyway, to get to the point of the story, we're debating whether we give up 2 first-round picks. And I'll rewind a couple of days. And I was talking to a Western Conference team who we liked a player on their team. We offered 1 first for that player. They said no. And I got a little bothered with the GM. I'm like, this guy's never going to give this player up, but I'm just going to offer 2 first to see what happens, and very quickly he's like, no to 2 first. This is a player, by the way, that every 2K player, Colin Cowherd, Nick Wright, every human on earth would have said, oh my God, you have to give that player up for 2 first. So I just did it just to see. And he said no immediately. So fast forward to the final day, we're debating 2 firsts, and one of our great front office people were like 3 days ago, we couldn't even get this player for 2 firsts. Why are we debating this? Why are we even talking about this? We can get James Harden. He's a Hall of Fame player. And you're worried, and we're worried about a first in the future that's protected. That's the thing. I am very careful. I've never given up a unprotected future first. I think that can hurt franchises, but protected first, so even if things fall apart, in 2085 or whatever, when we gave it up, it won't be a pick in the top of the draft.
Well, I said on the air, I said, listen, Seth Curry, maybe you guys prize draft picks more. I live in Los Angeles where the Rams just give away first-round picks, and their takeaway is, hell, we're drafting bottom of the first round anyway. And I looked at the deal, and I thought, what I wouldn't want to give up, what I would have fought for, because, you never want to give up 2 picks, right? The Curry is interesting because I do think in today's modern game, he's a nice rotational piece. Is that something you lost a night's sleep on, the Curry component?
Yeah, you have to give up something to get something. Seth Curry was amazing for us. I mean,
yes,
one of the best shooters of all time. He's actually getting better, even though he's 32 or whatever he is. He came to his career later, and he's improving. So that was a very tough piece. So was Drummond, who was giving us probably the best minutes behind Joel Embiid ever. But, we thought that to take advantage of Joel in his prime over the next several years, to win it, we had to have a player like James Harden. So we don't mind, let's say people even are right. Let's say we quote unquote overpaid. First off, I don't know what that means. We went from 2% title odds to I think we're sitting at 13% right now. So to me, it's very straightforward. Our job is to give ourselves a chance to win the championship. This does it. And you're going to have to give up something to get a player of James Harden's caliber.
Are you worried a little bit you gave up Ben Simmons? I mean, he wasn't playing this year, so you're not really giving up his length. Drummond's a big, Ben is a lot of length when he did play. Harden's not a great defender. You still have, to me, I guess you have Embiid, Thibault. I guess probably that's not, I always think, I don't know why I always think about this, but many of the great teams, it's tips. It's a possession. You're battling for the ball. That stuff I think about all the time. What is something in this draft or in this trade that most of us in the media wouldn't think about? Like length is something bizarre I think about all the time in this league.
Well, you should. I mean, obviously you have to have a top defense. We had I think the second best defense last year. We had fallen to 9 this year. I think what you're describing is why we love Ben Simmons. He is a very good player. That is why, we would have preferred this didn't happen. It obviously happened. But having his ability to rebound, set the pace, deflections. I mean, he's an unbelievable defender. So lots of reasons why. Look, it was a win-win trade. I take a step back, and this, Colin, because you're a student of multiple sports. A trade is sort of a North American creation. That's not totally true, but it's mostly true. It's mostly big in North America. It's not really something big in the other sports that are big in the world. And some people question, why do you have trades? It's weird or whatever. You couldn't design a more, Adam Silver should be so happy, right? You couldn't design a better reason for a trade than what just happened. 2 players who wanted to be in a new situation, who are extremely good players, who will play very well in the other place and not this place. If this isn't the perfectly designed trade where both us and Brooklyn can get better, and the rest of the East, I think, is nervous right now. Both of us are a lot better, and the rest of the East, did moves that improved them, but not the sort of significant moves that Brooklyn and we did.
Daryl, it's interesting. I had said this on the air. Joy Taylor and I are both NBA fans, and I said it's a bad year. I said this a week ago, it's a bad year for stories. I said the Simmons story it's not any fun. Kyrie's not any fun. James isn't happy, it's not fun. Westbrook's not working in LA. I said this has always been a story league, right? Well, today I said on the air, I said I can't wait to watch Harden play with Embiid, and I'm fascinated Ben Simmons surrounded by all these shooters. Mm-hmm. It's kind of a perfect place for him. And so, my takeaway was, they just engineered 2 stories. Harden's an interesting player because in international soccer, if you look at Maradona, Ronaldo, Messi, big personalities, everything from tax evasion to we know who their girlfriends are. Europe's ahead of us on this. We understand the stars are dramatic and they're like international royalty. In America, when a player's quirky, we're like bad teammate. So when I look at Harden, I'm like, well, when he's engaged 90% of his career, he's a Hall of Famer. He is not a guy, he's a little bit of an artist. He can be moody. But I think to myself, well, that's international soccer. All the great players is our media naive to realize these are the world's greatest artists. Athletes are now. It's where all global wealth goes to buy teams. And that we have to bake in, they have needs, they have short careers, they are sensitive because they're hyper-criticized, And Harden's just what global sports are.
Yeah, I think, look, if you take a step back, we're an entertainment business, and there's a lot of similarities to where you live if you're still living in LA. I assume you are in Hollywood, where you have your Robert Downey Jr.'s, you have your the
Christian Bale.
Christian Bale's, Johnny Depp. You have these like hyper talented guys. They're just different. A lot of what makes them great is because they are different. And I think that's absolutely true. And I think I love the notion of a team. I think we've all played teams generally. And I think the teams that you or I on, Colin, I'm not trying to diss your sports career or whatever it might have been, but I'm guessing you probably didn't play like Elton Brand played with, Ron Artest and Lamar Odom when he was a kid. Like the teams I'm on, there's some better players, some worse players, but there's no future Mozart playing on my teams when I'm growing up. And, these guys like James Harden and the players I can't mention because they're on other teams that only you can mention, they are artists. They're not Matisse, they're not Matisse Thybulle, but they're that was a terrible joke.
Yeah.
But they are artists. They're different. I think you probably see more of it in Hollywood than anybody.
Oh yeah. Just down the street from.
I don't know. And sometimes people in your job can be a little like that, Colin. I don't know. There might be some some artists out there, who are sports talk show people. I don't know.
We've been known to be a little high maintenance. I'm not gonna run from that.
Do you only like one color M&M, Colin? That's my curiosity at this point.
No, I've got my personal quirks. I do.
You can use any toilet, like
Not really.
You don't have to have your own personal.
I've got these weird little.
I'm going to ask Nick. You can't lie to me. Nick will tell me. So.
No, he's still smoking Black and Tars, and he's rich. I'm like, dude, come on, move on to something more elegant.
Yeah.
It's living in the East. So I'm a West Coast guy. I lived in the East for 10 years, and I liked it. I said this. I needed to be around Boston and New York. It really taught me about people. I really did. I mean, societally, I loved Connecticut's prep schools, their intensity, I thought it was cool because I grew up in Washington State.
Connecticut prep schools are legendary.
Well, I mean, you know about these, don't you?
I've heard about it, but not for sports. Like you're talking about.
But I'm saying, there is something about the intensity when I used to listen to WFAN in New York. The West Coast didn't have that. They were punitive and they were hard. And I do think every sports executive should at least once have to work in the Northeast.
100%. Well, so I've been in Cleveland growing up, Boston. I was there for 4 years, and now Philadelphia. And I know growing up in Cleveland, 3WE was the radio station. I took pride. I'm not kidding. I took pride. They'd be like, we broadcast in 30 states, 3WE. And I'm like, I'm so happy. Our talk shows I was glued to the radio. Everything was the Browns, obviously, where I grew up. And I'm new to Philadelphia, but the fans in the Northeast absolutely are different. They I think just look, when it's snowing out and you're indoors all day, you want your team to be playing well, or you get angry. You're not happy.
That's right.
And especially if the team does dumb things, like you're really angry. So, yeah.
Yeah. No, I remember listening to WFAN. The Yankees had made some off-season trades. Now, I don't think well-run teams are influenced by this, but the Mets at the time weren't well-run, and they made a move. It was the callers were killing the Mets. Make a move at the break. Make a move. And they went and got Jason Bay, an outfielder, who just did not work at all. You could tell he was a clunky outfielder. They had a huge, spacious outfield that wouldn't work. But the point being is I did think sometimes the intensity of the media influenced front offices. Sometimes at the trade deadline, make a move. And because I think owners often listen to that. And then they put pressure on general managers. When you look at this team right now, Embiid has a little bit of an injury history. Do you feel, and Harden is now not 24 years old, do you feel, listen, this is a 2 or 3 year window. How do you view the whole thing?
I view it as, look, the most important year is this year. We're in this phase where I've never seen the NBA so wide open. I don't know what you think, Colin. It's like basically Phoenix, Golden State, Brooklyn, us, Milwaukee. If you look in Vegas right now, pretty much all of us have about the same odds, and they're all about 1-6. So it's wide open. You don't see a Golden State, which we kept banging against that wall. Our Houston teams. And prior to that, there was a Miami that everyone had to bang their head against. There's not a team like that that's sitting at 40, 50% title odds, which can happen in basketball. It's really rare. So it's wide open. This year's the most important. But we've got a good run. Hall of Fame players like James, they age well. I mean, I think if you look at both the modern techniques that are out there, Hall of Fame level ball handlers and basketball IQ players, there's a few in the league I can't mention, but you can say, are playing at a very high level late into their 30s. And so we feel very good. Look, Joel's bigs generally don't last quite as long, especially as you get over 7 feet. These years are critical, like the next few years. And we have, I think, arguably for sure, the best perimeter interior combination in the league.
If I'd never seen Joel Embiid play, and you were sending me out to scout him, and you said, hey, I want you to go look at this guy. You're going to go scout this series. And I said, yeah, I hear this Joel Embiid is great. I'd never seen him play. How would you describe him to somebody?
Well, it depends on your age. You're old enough, so I'd say Hakeem Olajuwon if he was 7'1". I mean, I don't know if you've been next to Hakeem, but he's like 6'10". I mean, he's tall, but he's not like when I was a kid watching on TV, I like for sure he's 7 feet until you get with him. So imagine a 7'1" Hakeem Olajuwon would be they're different in some ways, but both were two-way players. Both were extraordinarily impactful defensively. Both were extraordinarily skilled offensively with amazing footwork. I remember like one of the biggest wow moments when I first came to Philadelphia, you'll never guess, was the Wizards playoffs last year. Joel came down and sort of tweaked his leg, like not
I
bad.
remember.
Yeah, tweaked his leg. He actually didn't play game 4 because he tweaked it in game 3, didn't play game 4. In the back hallway, and Josh Harris and the group had already built up a wonderful medical staff around him, put him through this regiment that they built, that they have for when anything happens. I call it the Jiffy Lube 57-point test. They like run Joel through all these paces. He was able to do moves with both legs off each leg balance that I think Simone Biles would have been moderately impressed with his mobility and balance and strength off each leg at his size. I've never seen anything like it. And people say the same about Olajuwon. So, and they both played soccer growing up. I think the parallels are there, except Joel's, 3 inches taller and much bigger, actually.
I'm going to throw something at you that's kind of weird. So there was always this saying that there were more bigs that busted than guards. And some of that was personality driven, that if you were 7 feet tall in 9th grade, it's difficult socially. And that a lot of the bigs in my lifetime, Wilt was kind of flaky, Kareem was sort of stoic. A lot of centers busted. And if you look at 4 or 5 centers who didn't, David Robinson, Akeem, Shaq, Embiid, Giannis, they all share something, a very joyful personality, a transferable sort of personality in a locker room, is that they handled their size at a young age. Maybe they weren't as tall at 11. And that first, my initial theory, which is bigs I had heard for years, could be very different people. But a lot of the great ones, and you've got one, they handled that kind of social challenge differently, and they're very happy people, and it plays in a room.
Yeah, absolutely. Their EQ is generally higher. Well, I've actually studied why bigs bust at a higher rate, and
why?
It's 2 factors, and it's related to what you say. So there's 2 big factors. One is they're overpicked. So let's say you're a GM. It's not as true anymore because people know the games are going towards more skill than size. But if you look through the history of NBA drafts, the if you start to get into the late first, second round, a lot of GMs in the past were like, well, I probably won't get fired if I pick the 7-footer. And if it hits, it hits. It's amazing. But they were just over-selected. They really were. Like, it's like provable in the data. And then on top of that, this is less database. This is more psychology. A lot of bigs play the game just because they were tall early, and they were encouraged by somebody, parents, friends, coach at their local school. Hey, you should play basketball. You're tall, right? But they don't develop the habits and love the game as much. And that's what usually sustains you all the way to be a great player in the NBA. A lot of them will even get to the NBA, not love it, but that the work ethic after you get paid millions of dollars is still very high and needed. And so both of those, I think, contribute to a bust rate. And you're right. I hadn't noticed that the bigs you mentioned are very gregarious, very, sort of smart. And they had to use their social skills to sort of survive some tough early times in their life, I think.
Right. See, Daryl, a lot of my theories aren't bullshit. They work.
I haven't heard of Manalytics. You haven't brought up Manalytics again yet. Come on. Where'd that theory go? I don't even remember what it meant, but I loved it. It was one of my favorites.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're seeing it in the NFL too. The analytics. I've always been a fan of them because I think it's smarter sports. But I've said before, I don't want to reduce my athletes to code.
Right.
Like there are moments with Doc Rivers. It's like I want Doc to look the athlete in the eye and be like, dude, I just want you to take the shot.
He does that. That's actually what we're excited about. I think when obviously I came after Doc and Elton were here, and they thought that the three of us together could make great things. And so far, I've been learning so much from Doc. He's won a title. I think our strengths are very complementary. He's unbelievable with players, motivation, doing what you just said, which is like, I have a feeling this guy's going to deliver for us tonight. And he does a really great job with that.
I always felt he was Joe Torre as a baseball manager. He reminds me of the stepdad you don't want to disappoint.
Interesting. I also think like this whole 3-1 thing is really nuts because like he's had a bunch of big leads. Do you know who had to create the big lead? Doc Rivers and the team. like, what does it matter? Losing 7 games, it's somehow worse if you do it going up 3-1 and then losing 7 than what if we just alternated every game? No one would talk about it. So, like, to me, actually building a 3-1 lead is a huge achievement. Obviously, if you coach long enough, you're going to have some good times. You can have some bad times. He's had both. So it's just like everyone's trying to find a story for why they're up or down on something, which is fine. That's part of the job. So,
Daryl, NBA has been a players' league since Spencer Haywood. It's been a players' league forever. I do think there's a danger in labor running anything is that they're more emotional, they're more self-concerned than the macro level. And I did.
Oh yeah, because owners aren't self-concerned at all. Yeah, owners are always
touche,
magnanimous,
altruistic. What is the balance though? Taking care of your stars, taking care of your players, but them understanding this is a big business and we're all in this together.
Yeah, it's a balance. Look, you only win with great players, but you only win when you can make those great players be part of something larger than themselves. So again, this is where Doc comes in. It is not an easy balance. I think every coach GM has struggled with this balance over their times and different teams. But you have to balance it. Look, it's the job. Like if you're just like, oh, I just want to have players who shoot corner threes and do all this stuff, but really the job is personality management, getting them in the right role, the right frame of mind to succeed, and then putting them then in a system that enhances their strengths and minimizes their weaknesses. And if it was all about just like their skill on the court, we could play 2K, but it's not.
So I'm going to throw a couple of ideas for the NBA because I think NBA has always been willing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can't wait.
So I said today.
He's better than Nick Wright's ideas, I'm assuming. Yeah.
What are his black and tars after every W? What is that?
No, he'll have He'll have some wacky idea. So I'm ready for yours. Yeah.
I'm more of a business guy than Nick.
Okay.
I try to tell him that. So I would cut the league down to about 74 games because the revenue produced by television, you're not as beholden to seats and food sold and parking, is that I would think about reducing it to 74 to 70 games, no back-to-backs, little longer all-star break, add perhaps another round of playoffs. I would cut first round to best of 5, not 7. Less is more. I think the money being generated by television puts less of a burden on butts in seats. Thoughts?
So you're 100% right, but you're too timid. You got to go farther. To me, I like 58. I like every team plays every team 2 times. So I like a 58 game schedule. You're 100% right. You'll make up any loss, revenue from tickets and whatever over time, in better ratings. Like, people tune in because it's a big game, and they tune in and how likely you can win the title. And too many times in the NBA, there's a Monday night, 2 teams who aren't very good playing, and it's not good. It's not good for the sport, and we're moving that way. I would add a midseason tournament, which Adam Silver's done a really nice job. He's pushing that. We just won that in our minor leagues. The playoffs, I 100% agree. Shorter is better. I would have it one and done. One and done. Every game is going to be like a Super Bowl or something.
Until the conference finals?
The whole way. And I know I'm like the guy everyone else says is crazy, but there's a reason everyone tunes into every game at huge ratings in the NFL. It is literally one and done. And the NCAA tournament in 63 games gets more TV money than we do in our entire regular season. So, the more drama, the more TV ratings, the more money. So in terms of your business, I know these are radical things. Everyone in the league thinks I'm crazy, but I would do one and done. I would have the regular season. If you're the top 2, you get a bye. If you're the next few, you get seeded well. The rest have to do a one and done play-in. I like radical and creating huge appointments. We just saw the Super Bowl. Any sport should want more games that are close to the Super Bowl. Nothing's going to beat the Super Bowl for a little while, though. I think the NBA can pass the NFL in my lifetime for sure, for their biggest game being a big deal.
I would disagree, but nonetheless, here's my second idea.
Oh, great. I'm good.
I would institute the hand check again. Here's why. Initially, the hand check was eliminated, and sort of that forearm you could use in the back of a center because it felt like almost a violent move. But I would argue the lack of a hand check and the evolution of the quickness, the twitchiness, and the talent of players, you cannot stay in front of point guards. They go to the basket and have trees fall on them. And increasingly, little guys are getting hurt more, and they're the quarterbacks of your sport. I don't care who gets hurt. When Chris Paul's out, the Suns are not as much fun to watch, and the Warriors aren't as much fun to watch when they don't have Steph Curry. You can lose a forward, even occasionally a big. I want to see movement. Institute a hand check to be able to at least simulate some level of keeping littles out of the paint. It will actually preserve smaller players.
Yeah, so where I'd agree with you primarily is that what we have to stop, and the league's moving in a good direction, is that if you are somewhere within 5 feet in near the basket, it's basically still mixed martial arts under the hoop. If you've sat under the hoop, which I bet you have,
yes,
you can't imagine the level of strength, athleticism, and the amount of physical, just huge bodies hitting huge bodies that you see. And that's what's allowed 5 feet and in. And then you go in the perimeter and you can barely breathe on a point guard who's 5'10" and fast going past you. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever to the rules. It creates really weird things when you're in the brackish area from 5 feet to 10 feet. So all of a sudden, you have to go from I can't touch them to now I can be physical, but they're driving. It's very complicated, and it's easier said than done to try and clean it up. But I would say you either need to not allow the physical play also in the interior, or you have to get back to allowing, when there's contact, there has to be extreme levels of contact that moves people off their line, off their base, off their inertial position before you're calling a foul, even on the perimeter. On the interior, you can like go up and hammer someone, and especially if it's like a loose ball, and there's almost never a call, like unless the guy's like tackling them or physically throwing them down, or it's a very obvious they jump in the air and they get pushed so the ref can see them getting knocked off the line. Otherwise, it's basically anything goes on the interior, and it's basically too much like barely touching them in the perimeter.
Finally, this isn't a theory. It's just I like that I can take you to these places, or you can take my audience to places. There was, for a time, the international players were seen as more finesse but more highly skilled because of the academies they went into early, especially bigs. They were front-facing the basket, better shooters, Dirk Nowitzki. And the sense was the American player was a little more physical, not as skilled, a little tougher. In your years in the NBA, I'm seeing a little nastier international players and more skilled American players, at least earlier. That's my interpretation. You tell me, am I onto something or not?
Yeah, I think the league's gotten more skill-based. Like, there's very, very few like one-dimensional rebounders. There were a bunch when I was like Reggie Evans. There were the Theo Ratliff. They're just like one-dimensional, really guys, and you just can't have it. To have an offense that can put big points on the board, you need skill at all 5 positions. So skill has become more of a premium. People are better at our lower levels in the United States to do more with bigs, and that they are put the ball in their hand more because they know that's how they're going to become an NBA player. So you'll very rarely find a top prospect or top 100, 200 prospect who doesn't have the ball in their hands, no matter what their size, at a very young age now. So that's adding to our skilled bigs. We obviously have a huge number of people playing in the NBA, so we have a huge talent base. Like, it's like in Kenya, the reason they have amazing runners, the entire country runs. In the US, everyone plays basketball. So, and we're a country of 350 to 400 million. So our talent is going to get more and more skilled, especially at a bigger and bigger sizes. And it's closed the gap from international. So international players always were better ball handlers, better shooters, better passers because of how they train. Like Arturas Karnisovas, who's the Chicago Bulls GM, we worked together. I believe he told me that he wasn't really allowed to play 5-on-5 until he was like 12. Like, they just drilled ball handling, shooting. It sounds horribly boring as someone who grew up in the US and played basketball. If I was allowed to play till I was 12, and I'm sure there's some exaggeration, I'm getting the story wrong, but more or less that's the case. They had these academies to feed into the overall Soviet system that Lithuania was a part of at the time. So anyway, long story short, to get back to your original question, I believe our players are getting more skilled in the US. The training methods are better. The academy levels are better. We have sort of like academies happening at the high school level now and things like that. And it's closed the gap to the skill and the international level. And what that means is that the less athletic players from Europe, they don't have a big skill advantage anymore. So if you don't have a skill advantage, as someone who didn't, I don't know if you played basketball.
Yes.
You probably were more skilled than me. I was tall and I was big. And so when you're tall and big and less skilled, if you're not playing physical, you're not bringing anything. You may as well not play. So I had to play very physical just to be good enough to be on the floor at my pathetic high school level. So anyway, I'm agreeing with you again. I need to disagree with you. If I want a future radio program with you, I need to like make up some controversy.
Yeah, we have to manufacture
what
angst.
Made up argument should we have today or something like that. So,
but one of the reasons I love bringing you on is I've always been fascinated with the growth of sports and the evolution of it. Even as a kid, I grew up with Jim Zorn. He was a quarterback for the Seahawks. He was a left-hander. There were no left-handers.
Jim Zorn. I'm old enough to know Jim Zorn. So
yeah. So I don't know. That was kind of my indoctrination of sports, professional sports, was a lot of that. Now, I did grow up. I saw Wilt Chamberlain back in 72 or 73. He was old, slow, headband Laker Wilt. I don't remember him. But I do remember, it's funny about my earliest sports memories. Spencer Haywood is one of them, who was this great player who fought back and said, no. Nobody's coming to watch you guys. They're coming to watch me. Do you remember Spencer Haywood?
I don't know Spencer Haywood. I was just glad you didn't reference George Mikan earlier in the radio program. I wasn't. I do know of Wilt Chamberlain. I didn't get to see.
How old are you?
I'm 49. So
Jesus.
So my big first sports memories. One was my father taking me to see Hank Aaron when I was like 6. In Milwaukee, because I was born in Wisconsin, and that's an early memory. And my other world is I loved World Be Free on the Cliff
yes,
in '82. And what's crazy is I see World Be Free every night. He's from Philadelphia, and he's like, it's great. Like sometimes I want to suit him up because he's in great shape, and I know he can shoot. And shooting's a premium. World Be Free would be much better now than he was back then.
I've said that about Dave Kingman, who played for the Mets and Giants. Today, it'd be Cody Bellinger,
Dave Kingman,
a tall guy who strikes out and hit home runs.
Rob Deere was the next Dave Kingman, basically, and now that's in vogue. Either hit a home run or you're striking out, so you're not hitting a double play ball. I mean, that's another thing where baseball's going. That I want more bunts and runs. I want more fun stuff in the field, Colin. Analytics is ruining baseball. It's ruining it.
Well, I will say this. The one thing about analytics in basketball, I love Chris Paul's game.
Oh.
I love the mid-range jumper. And I always had, I think I told you this before, is that the playoffs become situational. Like in baseball, analytics are great for volume, but in the playoffs, you'll ask Clayton Kershaw to come out of the bullpen. In the NBA playoffs, hell, sometimes, Daryl, I just need a stop, and I need a basket. Kawhi Leonard's great at both of those. Mm-hmm. So that's my rub on analytics is I do think they work all the time. But I do think there are things in the playoffs situationally. For instance, referees tend to swallow the whistle in the NBA conference finals to finals. You're not Karl Malone.
You're not getting the foul.
You're not going to get the foul, Karl Malone. Sometimes James Harden. So, I always think the mid-level player, the Chris Paul, has increasing value as the season progresses. Is that reasonable?
Well, I think not only as you go into the playoffs, but also late in the game, some of the dynamics. So one thing I'd like to clear up as I have to defend the word analytics is people view it as like going on fourth down or shooting threes, or they boil it down to these talking points. And yes, if you were to just say, every moment in a game is the same, so a 3 is usually better than a 2, or every moment in a game is the same, and 4th and 3 on the 40 is generally better to go for it than not. Whatever it might be, that ignores that analytics is really just using data to inform your decisions. So the decisions haven't changed. So late in a basketball game, let's say you're down 1, for example, and you have the last shot. Well, a 3 does you no good there. A 3 is no better than a 2. Like you're just trying to it's very important to go last. So you don't want to leave time on the clock. You want that shot to be as high percentage as possible, whether it's a 2 or a 3. So, but that's analytics too, is analyzing those probability shifts. So people sort of perceive that like analytics somehow doesn't know about game context, or the fact that, going on fourth down is dynamic based on how tough the defense you're going against is, or how good your offense is at generating short yardage versus expected value of yardage. So that's all part of it, right? And so it becomes like everything and nothing, but really all it means is like I'm going to use data to help me make the decision versus just make the decision based on my own personal experience, which is basically I'm only using the data of my lifetime and what I've watched, which is very good data, but it's not all of it. And so you should use that data and other data. That's really all we're saying.
I think we made America smarter over the last 35 minutes.
I hope so. I love coming on your show because I get the best questions. So
yeah,
I do.
Nick Wright. He'll break down these basketball situations, and I'm like, Nick, that's the thing.
He's just getting preachy in his old age. Just
Isn't
kidding.
he?
He's going for those soundbite YouTube clips. Like he's selling out, Colin. Selling out, like closer look style. You know,
You and I are still have that garage band quality. We haven't sold out yet.
Exactly. Yeah, none of us have sold out.
Great seeing you, Daryl.
All right, thanks, Colin. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Hi, everybody. It's Colin Cowherd, your affable host. I don't ask for much, really. That little box over there, subscribe box, push that. Subscribe to the YouTube page of the Volume Sports. Now, there will be a brief electrical shock after you do it. But hey, we're all in this together, right?